what are the conflicts and likely outcomes of the recent rulings regarding gun restrictions for citizens under 21 and the latest gun restriction bill signed into law?
Yeah. So obviously, as you pointed out, the big first major federal gun control legislation signed in several years. One of the big conflicts, you've written pretty extensively about what this bill does and doesn't do. But one of the things you're really starting to pop up is this idea of a de facto waiting period being created by the process of this background check. If you want to explain that.
Yeah, I guess there's still some dispute over this because Senator Murphy and the NRA are in agreement that it does exactly that. It creates a de facto waiting period. But Senator Cornyn, the Republican, so Murphy's the Democrat who was involved in these negotiations, and Cornyn is the Republican, and his office very much disagrees with this idea that it creates a de facto registry. If you look at the text, or not registry, but waiting period. If you look at the text, I think in practice it'll be hard to. I guess we'll have to wait and see how it works, but basically the FBI is given 3 days to identify whether or not somebody might have a prohibiting record, a juvenile record. And then they're given 10 days total to find that record before a sale can proceed without a decision. So the text does say that they have to return an answer as soon as possible. So if they figure it out before that 3-day investigation period is over, they have to return it. So I guess in theory, it could end up being instantaneous, but it sounds like something that in practice, because the way it works is the FBI, the background check system, which is run by the FBI, of course, is supposed to call up the local police for where the 18 to 20-year-old who's affected by this regulation is living, call up their state mental health record system and call up their state juvenile criminal record system to figure out if they have potentially some sort of disqualifying record. And so that process doesn't sound like something that's going to be instantaneous.
Just describing that process off the bat, interagency, bureaucratic, playing a game of telephone, doesn't sound like a quick thing at all. Right.
Now, I mean, I guess if these three entities all have all of their records in an electronic database that the FBI can just query, like they do with a normal instant background check. The NICS system queries a couple of databases. That's how a background check works. And so it's looking for whether or not you have a record or maybe are currently in a court proceeding, with charges, because then if you are, they might, that's when you might get delayed for 3 days. That 3-day period under the normal check, you'll get delayed so that they can look into whatever the questionable record is to see if it is something that's prohibiting. Whereas in this system kind of turns that on its head. It's basically saying like, go and look for something potentially prohibiting from these three agencies or three departments to see, rather than you get a flag that shows up in an instant check and then the FBI goes and does a more thorough, in-person look. So to me, it certainly seems like all of those 18 to 20-year-olds are just going to automatically get put into a delayed situation. And so it is a de facto waiting period, Maybe the system will work faster than it sounds like it will. Right. But that's what's at issue. But I think he's also referring to there was a ruling in California about their under 21 ban on ownership of AR-15s and other similar firearms, and so I think that could be impacted by the Bruen decision. Certainly, I think all these sort of under 21, 18 to 20-year-old regulations could be impacted, because I don't know if there's going to be an analogous historical gun regulation that targeted 18 to 20-year-olds. I doubt that that's the case.
I highly doubt it. Yeah.
Again, you'd have to go and search through and see what's out there. But yeah, I would be very surprised if those weren't implicated by this ruling. And although I will say that, like, I'm not sure that anything in the Senate bill or the new federal law is going to be immediately implicated by this ruling.
I agree.
Because what they're doing is basically, I mean, maybe this 18 to 20-year-old special background check thing could, but it seems less likely because it doesn't actually ban those people from owning guns. It just changes the background check system for them. And so you're still basically talking about background checks to ensure that they're not dangerous people, which does seem likely constitutional under how the Supreme Court has interpreted these things, or what they've written especially in Heller, about what kinds of gun laws are, presumptively constitutional. Now, that's just like a couple paragraphs in Heller, so it's not exactly completely fleshed out, but what they've talked about as categories of restrictions that are in line with that tradition, it does seem like the background check system and most stuff that involves like looking into whether or not somebody is prohibited, that those seem constitutional. Is what I was, and that's all this bill really does, is change those things. So